A day by the ocean. You know, there are moments in life when everything changes. Not with a bang, but with a single sentence that cuts right through your heart. I'm Margaret, 53 years old, and I've spent most of my adult life trying to be the person everyone needed me to be. A good daughter, a supportive sister, someone who kept the peace even when it cost me my own. It was a Tuesday morning when my mother called. I was sitting in my small kitchen, drinking my second cup of coffee and looking through the window at the birds gathering around the feeder I'd hung last spring. "Margaret, we need to talk about Rebecca's wedding." My younger sister Rebecca was getting married in 6 weeks. I'd been excited about it, genuinely happy for her. She'd found someone who made her laugh, who treated her with kindness. At 48, she was radiant with joy. "Of course, Mom. What about it?" There was a pause on the line. That particular kind of silence that tells you something uncomfortable is coming. "Well, dear, we've been looking at the photographs from the engagement party, and Rebecca is concerned about how the wedding photos will look." I waited, my heart already starting to sink. "You've put on some weight over the past year, Margaret. Rebecca wants her wedding to be perfect, and she's worried that in the family photos, well, the difference between you two might be distracting." I sat very still. The coffee cup felt heavy in my hands. "What are you saying, Mom? She's asking if you could lose 20 pounds before the wedding." "Just 20 pounds. It's not that much, really. 6 weeks is plenty of time if you're dedicated." I couldn't speak. Outside, a cardinal landed on the feeder, bright red against the gray morning sky. "Margaret, are you there?" "I'm here. So you'll do it? For your sister? For her special day?" I thought about the past year. The year after my divorce was finalized. The year I'd finally started eating again without feeling sick. The year I'd begun to recognize my own reflection without flinching. Yes, I'd gained weight. 23 pounds to be exact. 23 pounds that represented learning to feed myself with kindness instead of punishment. 23 pounds of choosing peace over perfection. "Margaret, this is important. You know how Rebecca gets. We don't want her stressed before the wedding. It's just a few pounds. You can do this." Something inside me went very quiet, very still. "Okay, Mom. Oh, wonderful. I knew you'd understand. Rebecca will be so relieved. I'll text you the name of that diet plan Aunt Linda used." After we hung up, I sat at that kitchen table for a long time. The coffee grew cold. The cardinal flew away. Then I picked up my phone and started searching. I didn't search for diet plans or gym memberships or weight loss programs. I searched for something I'd seen advertised months ago. A wellness retreat called Ocean's Peace, about 3 hours up the coast. A place that promised nothing except quiet, comfort, and space to breathe. The price made me blink. $4,700 for a full-day experience. It included everything: spa treatments, meditation sessions, gourmet meals prepared by a chef who specialized in joyful eating, access to their private beach, and something they called compassionate counseling. It was outrageous. It was extravagant. It was exactly what I needed. I booked it for the day of Rebecca's wedding. The next 6 weeks were interesting, to say the least. My mother called twice a week to check on my progress. I told her I was working on it, which wasn't a lie. I was working on something. Rebecca sent me links to bridesmaid dresses in what she called forgiving cuts. I smiled and said thank you. My father, who usually stayed out of family dynamics, pulled me aside at Sunday dinner 3 weeks before the wedding. "You doing all right, Maggie?" He was the only one who still called me that. The nickname from childhood before I became Margaret, the responsible one. "I'm figuring things out, Dad." He looked at me with those kind, tired eyes. "You know, your mother means well, I know. But meaning well isn't the same as being right." I hugged him then, held on a little longer than usual. The morning of the wedding, I woke up at 5. My bag was already packed. Comfortable clothes, a book I'd been meaning to read, my journal, and absolutely nothing that would be appropriate for a wedding. I left a note on my kitchen counter, though I knew no one would see it until much later. "Gone to find some peace. Back tomorrow. Love to all." The drive up the coast was beautiful. The sun rose slowly, painting the ocean in shades of gold and pink. I had the windows down, despite the early morning chill, and for the first time in weeks, I could breathe deeply. Ocean's peace was more beautiful than the pictures. A sprawling estate built into the cliffside, all natural wood and glass that seemed to bring the ocean right into the building. A woman named Sarah greeted me at the entrance. She was maybe 60, with silver hair and the kind of smile that reaches the eyes. "Welcome, Margaret. We're so glad you're here." "Thank you. Today is entirely yours. No schedule unless you want one. No expectations, just space to be whoever you need to be." I felt something tight in my chest begin to loosen. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said gently. "You don't have to answer, but it helps us serve you better. What brought you here today?" I looked out at the ocean, visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. My family asked me to change who I am to fit into their picture of perfection. I decided to choose myself instead. Sarah nodded slowly. "Then you're exactly where you need to be." The day unfolded like a gift I gave myself. I started with a massage. Not the quick, efficient kind you get at the mall, but a 90-minute session where the therapist, an older gentleman named Marcus, worked through years of tension I'd been carrying in my shoulders. "You hold a lot up here," he said gently. "Like you've been carrying weight that isn't yours." I started crying then. Quiet tears that rolled down into the cushioned face rest. "That's okay," Marcus said softly. "That's part of the release. Your body knows what it needs to let go." After the massage, I walked on their private beach. The sand was cool under my bare feet. The ocean was exactly as I'd imagined it that morning when my mother had called 6 weeks ago. Vast and peaceful and entirely indifferent to my size, my age, my worth. I thought about Rebecca, probably in her dress by now, surrounded by bridesmaids and flowers and all the beautiful chaos of a wedding morning. I thought about my mother, probably realizing by now that I wasn't coming. I thought about myself, standing on this beach, choosing peace. Lunch was served in a sunlit room overlooking the water. The chef, a warm woman named Claire who was probably in her late 60s, brought out each course herself. "This is a celebration of nourishment," she explained. "Food made with joy, meant to be eaten with joy." There was a salad with edible flowers, fresh bread still warm from the oven, a soup that tasted like comfort in a bowl, grilled fish with herbs I couldn't name but loved instantly. "I spent 40 years cooking to make myself smaller," Claire told me as she poured tea, counting every calorie, measuring every bite. "Then one day, I decided to cook to make my life bigger. This is that food." I ate slowly, savoring every bite. No guilt. No calculation, just taste and gratitude. "You were supposed to be somewhere else today," Claire observed. "It wasn't quite a question. My sister's wedding, and yet you're here, and yet I'm here." She smiled. "Good for you." In the afternoon, I had what they called a compassionate counseling session. I met with a therapist named Dr. Harrison, a distinguished-looking man with kind eyes and gray hair. "Tell me about the wedding," he said simply, and I did. I told him everything, the phone call, the 20 pounds, the year after my divorce, the slow, painful work of learning to exist in my body without shame. "What your family asked of you," Dr. Harrison said carefully, "was to make yourself smaller so they could feel more comfortable. That's a heavy burden to carry. I've always been the one who accommodates. Tell me, Margaret, what would happen if you stopped?" I'd never really considered it. What would happen if I simply said no? I suppose they'd be upset, and then what? They'd probably tell me I was being selfish, difficult, that I was ruining Rebecca's day. Would that be true? I thought about it, really thought about it. No. Rebecca's day was never dependent on my body. That was just an excuse for something else. What do you think that something else is? Control, comfort. The idea that if everyone looks right and acts right, then everything is right. Dr. Harrison nodded. "And how has that belief system worked for you?" "It hasn't. It's kept me small. Not physically small, but small in every way that matters. Small dreams, small needs. A small life, what would a bigger life look like? I looked out the window at the vast ocean. I don't know yet, but I think it starts with days like this. Days where I choose myself. My phone had been vibrating in my bag all day. I'd put it on silent that morning and hadn't looked at it since. Now in the early evening, as I sat in a meditation garden watching the sunset, I finally checked it. 47 missed calls. 63 text messages. My mother, where are you? The wedding starts in 2 hours. Margaret, this is unacceptable. Call me immediately. Your sister is devastated. How could you do this? Rebecca, are you kidding me right now? Today of all days? I can't believe you're this selfish. Don't bother showing up now. Various aunts, cousins, and family friends with variations of shock and disappointment. But there was one message that was different. From my father, Maggie, I don't know where you are, but I hope you're somewhere good, somewhere peaceful. You've spent a lot of years being what everyone else needed. Maybe it's time to figure out what you need. Love you, kiddo. I sat there in the garden as the sun painted the sky in impossible colors, and I cried. But this time, they were different tears. Tears of relief, of release, of recognition. I was 53 years old, and for the first time in my life, I had chosen myself. The day ended with a gentle yoga session on the beach at sunset. Our instructor, a serene woman named Maya, guided us through movements that felt less like exercise and more like prayer. Honor your body exactly as it is, she said softly. Not as you wish it was, not as others think it should be, but as it is right now, in this moment. I stretched and bent and breathed, and with each movement, I felt more present in my own skin. As the session ended and we sat in final meditation, Maya offered one last thought. The greatest act of rebellion is self-acceptance. The greatest act of courage is self-love. When I drove home that night, I felt different, lighter, though not in the way my family had demanded. Lighter in spirit, in heart. I knew what was waiting for me. The angry calls, the accusations, the family drama that would probably last for months. But I also knew something else. I knew that I had drawn a line, that I had chosen my own peace over their comfort, and that nothing would ever be quite the same. When I pulled into my driveway just after midnight, there was a car waiting. My father's old truck. He was sitting on my porch steps, and he stood when he saw me. Dad, what are you doing here? Waiting for you. Wanted to make sure you got home safe. Does Mom know you're here? Your mother is very upset. But she'll get over it. They all will, eventually. We stood there in the dark, the sound of crickets filling the quiet. Was it worth it, Maggie? Your day? I thought about the ocean, the massage, the food eaten with joy, the counseling session that had cracked something open inside me, the sunset yoga on the beach. Yes, Dad. It was worth everything. He hugged me then. Good. That's real good. I'll have to face them eventually. You will. But you'll face them as yourself now. Not as some smaller version they tried to create. The next few weeks were difficult. There were angry phone calls and tense family dinners. Rebecca didn't speak to me for a month. My mother oscillated between fury and wounded silence. But something interesting happened too. My cousin Jennifer called me one evening, 3 weeks after the wedding. I heard what you did, she said. I braced myself for another lecture. I think you're incredibly brave. That surprised me. I've been trying to lose 30 pounds for my daughter's graduation next month. She didn't ask me to. I just assumed I should. But after hearing what you did, I called the photographer and told her to make sure she captures me exactly as I am. Because that's who I'll be in that moment. Her mother. Not some smaller version of myself. Over the following months, I heard similar stories. An aunt who stopped dyeing her hair. A friend who wore the dress she wanted instead of the one that was age-appropriate. Another cousin who set boundaries with her own children about unsolicited advice. It turned out that my small act of self-preservation had given others permission to do the same. Rebecca and I eventually talked. Really talked. It happened on what would have been our mother's birthday the following year. We met at a coffee shop, neutral territory. "I was so angry with you," she started. "I know, but my wedding was beautiful. The photos are beautiful. And you know what? When I look at them now, I can see exactly who was missing. And I'm sad about that. I'm sad too, Rebecca. I wanted to be there. I wanted to celebrate with you. Then why weren't you?" I chose my words carefully. "Because the price of admission was too high. You asked me to change something fundamental about myself to fit into your vision, and I couldn't do that anymore. Not even for you." She was quiet for a long time. "I don't know if I would have had the courage to do what you did. You might surprise yourself." "Do you think we can find our way back?" she asked. "I think we can find a new way forward. One where we love each other as we are, not as we wish each other to be." It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. There was still hurt, still distance to bridge. But it was honest. And honesty, I was learning, was its own kind of love. My mother took longer. It was almost a year before she could talk to me without anger creeping into her voice. But slowly, we found a new rhythm. One afternoon, she surprised me by asking about that day. "What did you do? At that spa place?" So I told her. About the massage and the beach and the food and the counseling, about choosing peace. $4,700, she said, shaking her head. "That's a lot of money for a day." It was. But it was also the best money I've ever spent. Because it taught me that I'm worth choosing, that my peace matters. My body doesn't need to be a certain size to deserve kindness. She looked at me for a long moment. "I never meant to hurt you, Margaret. I know, Mom, but you did, and we both have to live with that. Can you forgive me?" "I'm working on it. Forgiveness takes time, but I can love you while I work on it." She nodded, and I saw tears in her eyes. "That's more than I deserve. Maybe, but it's what I can give right now." Now, sitting here 2 years later, I think about that day often. The day I chose the ocean over obligation. The day I spent $4,700 on my own peace. It changed everything. Not overnight, not dramatically, but slowly, steadily, like the tide reshaping the shore. I learned that self-care isn't selfish, that boundaries aren't cruel, that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to simply refuse to be smaller than you are. I learned that families can survive disappointment, that love can grow through conflict, that honesty is harder than accommodation but infinitely more sustaining. I learned that my body is my home, and I get to decide who lives there. Most importantly, I learned that it's never too late. Not at 53, not at any age. It's never too late to choose yourself, to draw a line, to say, no more. This is where I begin. Some people thought I was foolish, wasting money on a spa day instead of being at my sister's wedding, missing a once-in-a-lifetime event. But here's what they don't understand. I didn't miss a once-in-a-lifetime event. I created one. I gave myself permission to matter. I gave myself space to breathe. I gave myself a day of peace in a world that constantly demanded I be smaller, quieter, less. And that day became a foundation. Something I could build on. Something that reminded me in all the difficult days that followed that I am worth choosing. So if you're reading this or hearing this and you recognize yourself in my story, I want you to know something. You're worth choosing too. Maybe you won't spend thousands of dollars at a spa. Maybe your act of self-preservation will look different. Maybe it's saying no to a family dinner. Maybe it's wearing the dress you love instead of the one that flatters. Maybe it's letting your hair go gray. Maybe it's pursuing a dream you thought you were too old for. Whatever it is, do it. Choose yourself. Draw your line. Find your ocean. Because here's what I know now. What I wish I'd known at 30, at 40, at 50. You don't need anyone's permission to take up space. You don't need to earn the right to exist as you are. You don't need to be smaller to be loved. You just need to be brave enough to choose yourself. Once, and then again, and then again. It gets easier. Not easy, but easier. And the life you build on that foundation of self-acceptance is worth every uncomfortable conversation, every disappointed relative, every shocked reaction. It's worth everything. I still visit Ocean's Peace once a year, on the anniversary of Rebecca's wedding. It's become my ritual, my reminder, my reclaiming of that day. And every time I walk that beach, I remember the woman I was when I first arrived. Scared, uncertain, desperate for permission to exist, and I honor the woman I've become. Brave enough to give myself that permission, strong enough to hold that boundary, wise enough to know that peace isn't something you find, it's something you choose. Every single day. You choose it, and it starts with a single moment, a single decision, a single act of courage. It starts with saying, I am enough. Exactly as I am. Right now, that's where everything begins. That's where everything changes. That's where you find your way home. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of your own journey, I'd love to hear from you. Please take a moment to like this story and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Subscribe to hear more stories about courage, self-acceptance, and finding peace in unexpected places. And in the comments below, tell me, when was the last time you chose yourself? What did that look like for you? Your story matters, and sharing it might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Thank you for listening.